2 days ago, Valve has posted a new blog post. And it's nothing crazy. You can see it right here. It's literally 2 paragraphs. And I mean, I don't even know if these are 2 paragraphs. It's actually just 2 sentences. And it says they're updating on the update to MvM. And they're literally just reassuring everyone that they're still making the update. We're still working the MvM update, taking a lot longer to sort through the new content and changes than we've originally anticipated, but we promise we're still making progress. Thanks for being patient. That's what they said. This blog post is kind of interesting for everything else around the blog post. But you can also call that schizophrenic, like TF2 community members just reading way too much into it and all these all the other stuff. Now, the first thing I think we should talk about is this is really fucking weird. When I saw this, I immediately wrote a bunch of Discord messages to some other really long time old ass TF2 players. Also, I did speak to a literal Unk. I did speak to Uncle Dane as well, and we both agreed that this is really weird. This is not the Valve that we know. This is uncharacteristic. And I'm really, really curious why they felt the need to do this. And honestly, Valve is so famous for Valve time and being super quiet. Why did they even make these 2 blog posts? I think this is even crazy that they did any of this. It makes me wonder if they were getting, spammed of emails or something. But just to prove my point a bit, for any new Valve fans, if you go and read through, historical, the historical documents, the scrolls of the past, right? Gabe Newell did an AMA 10 years ago. He says that, and this is the way we talk about it internally, they prefer to communicate through their products. They're devoted to reading and listening to the community, and everyone believes it's an integral part. But when it comes to responding, they prefer to just ship updates that address issues or add functionality. They basically prefer to just stay quiet and just let it ride. And there's also a pretty lengthy talk made by Robin Walker a long time ago. When was this? 12 years ago, fuck. So this goes on for quite a bit, so I'm not gonna play it. You can watch it yourself, but Robin Walker basically says the same thing as well, that okay, they don't like to talk. They like to stay quiet. So this is really weird. What kind of feels like it makes sense to me is that there was a rumor that this MvM update was mainly spearheaded by a newer group of Valve hires. And I'm not gonna say this is, absolute proof or this definitely means that's true, but it is something to think about, right? It is strange, and that is one possible way you could explain why this is happening. Very strange. And it represents a shift in philosophy where these newer Valve hires come from different game studios. Even you could say more modern game studios with more modern dev practices, and they realize, okay, just not saying anything is incredibly bad. Even just saying, hey, we're still going is more than enough and very easy to do, and you can just do it. It's fine. You don't end up losing out anything for it. So that's interesting. That's topic 1. Topic 2. Now, what is taking so long, right? Because if you remember their original blog post in June, they did try to allude to when they think this was supposed to drop, and however way you could interpret this, their alleged deadline has kind of blew past, and it's not really the case anymore. So what's taking so long? What I don't understand where this comes from is that I saw a lot of online comments saying that the problem is that the workshop mappers are uploading maps with nothing else to it. It's just the base level with nothing else. And so the problem is that Valve needs to go and make the navigation meshes and need to make the bot waves, but that's just not true. And it's really easy to validate this. We can go hop on the workshop, right? Here's the TF2 map workshop on the map section. Filter for MvM, and we go sort by all time. You can start clicking through these workshop maps, and you can scroll down and you'll see, they have pop files included. They literally write it out. You don't have to download the map to figure this out. And you can check Calico. Here they literally call out, hey, we have 3 missions made and ready to go. You can go check on Hideout. They have a mission list. It's all here. They literally call out they have multiple mission files all packed in, and you can keep clicking on these submissions, and what you'll find is this very cool spreadsheet. And what you get is this. This is a spreadsheet made by Katsu and friends. Shout out to them for making this. But we skip to 2025, which is the important thing, which is the year that the blog post was made and when all of these MvM maps were put up. So on this sheet, we have headers for, does it have a pop file? A pop file is the entire mission. It's not a singular bot wave. It's the entire start to finish MvM map, and a nav mesh is like navigation mesh. It's how TF2 bots know how to navigate the map. So you need this to also have the bots move on the map, basically. And so if we go and check on how many of these maps do or don't have their pop file, right? We can paste in a formula to check this. 11 out of 77 have them. Now it's unfortunate that 11 of these maps don't have something so foundational and basic to having their maps be played, but there is 66 other maps for Valve to pick from. I feel like that's more than enough for an update, right? Are we really saying that Valve can make an update because 11 out of 77 maps do not have like the bot waves pre-made? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And if we also copy this formula over to the other column, only 2 maps don't have a pre-made nav mesh. So it's not even about Valve needs to make a navigation mesh themselves. So I don't really understand why people online keep saying it's an issue of, oh man, Valve has to go through so much work and effort to make all these maps playable and put them into the update. Like, they can't even copy and paste properly. I don't think that's even true. And I mean, I don't know how many of the ones that don't have it packed or even like the top ones. Like, these are all of the maps that were submitted to the workshop for MvM in 2025. I feel like it's not crazy to say that the ones that don't have impact probably aren't the ones that have a lot of effort put into them, right? So that's something I wanted to debunk. Like, we have hard numbers, it just doesn't make any sense. So moving on, second theory that people have been throwing out. Oh, Valve were unprepared. Valve simply had no idea that simply making an MvM update would take work. And I think this is really strange. This company hasn't made a substantial TF2 update in almost a decade. I feel like, just like logically speaking, why would they just decided to randomly promise an MvM update with zero forethought? Even if there was some crazy loose cannon at Valve, how would Eric Smith not have stopped them or given them advice or told them, hey, this is gonna be like much more work than you think? This isn't like TF2 has had 0 updates the entire time. There's no developers. Someone walked into an empty room and just went crazy. I don't understand how people think that it's like absolute fucking chaos at Valve and there's like 0 like any degree of like thinking or anything, you know? Like, I just don't get how that makes any sense to people. But so those are like the 2 really weird theories I keep seeing online, and I wanted to, you know, push back on them a little bit. But we can get to what I think is more likely. So the most boring answer is just that they don't have much time to work on it, so it's just taking longer. And if you go and look at the other blog posts and updates they've made, right, they really emphasize that there's way more than they expected, that the community have given them tons of stuff. And they also reiterated here that it's taking a lot longer to sort through the new content for them. So I think really like the most boring answer is just that they thought they would get maybe, let's say, like 10 to 20 maps on the workshop. And they say, okay, we only have 2 hours a week to work on this, but if people only give us 10 to 20 maps to check through, then we have enough time budgeted to handle this. And then they had an explosion of, you know, like almost 80 maps to try and test through, or at least to check out. Then the time that they originally budgeted just, you know, like, would just take forever. And I feel like that's okay. I guess you could blame Valve for not expecting more, but that's the boring, most rational answer to like what's going on. It's just they don't have time. But the more interesting answer might be that as they worked on it more and more and they started playtesting the maps, they caught the MvM bug, you know? They caught the butterflies for MvM and they're really in love with it and they want to make it something more. Maybe they started to realize that, dude, if we're putting in all this time to playtest these maps and to put all this effort into it, maybe we should make it more of an update than just a copy and paste. So the more interesting, more optimistic answer is maybe they actually have mostly done what they needed to do and what they originally set out to do, but then now they just want to do more of the update. You know, maybe they want to add more bot mechanics. They want to add more wave mechanics. Maybe they want to add, you know, like new upgrades, or they want to fix and rebalance MvM stuff, right? That's possible, but that's a more optimistic take if you want it, if you want to believe that. So those are the two standard answers that I think make sense here. And here's an answer for the Tyler fans. Here's the crackpot answer. Half-Life 3 was supposed to come out last December, so they announced MvM ahead of that, so they could drop the MvM update after they're all free from the Half-Life mines. But Half-Life got delayed, and now they're back into the mines, so MvM is also delayed. That's the only explanation I can think of. That's the only explanation that could ever make any sense. It's Half-Life's fault. Now, we don't have an MvM update, but, you know, believe that if you want to. Actually, there is one more crackpot theory you can throw in there. Maybe next year, since it is TF2's 20th anniversary, they're gonna make a anniversary video like they did for Half-Life, and they're gonna drop the MvM update to coincide with that. That's what it's for. And they're also making an MvM update to scout and to brainstorm changes and updates they want to do for MvM in TF2 Source 2. That's what it's all for, surely. Alright, the last oddity that's interesting to talk about is that in the first update, this was pretty much all focused on, oh man, dude, we're having such a tough time getting through all the submissions. There's so much to test, you know, there's so many maps. But for the super ultra hopium enjoyers, this time, besides just calling out new maps and submissions, they also said and changes. This is where you can overdose hard on hopium, depending on what you think it means. I don't even know if I could speculate. You know, like, I feel like what's more likely is that there's a lady at Valve named Casey, who's basically like a publicist for them. They've been doing most of, you know, like the Steam announcements about summer sales and updates and whatever other stuff. You could say that it's her writing it, and so they just threw in the and changes stuff just for the heck of it, you know, just because they don't actually work on the dev team, and you know, they had the free time to write a blog post for the devs, and you know, she just ad-libbed some stuff together. But you know, depending on how you stand on the spectrum of low to high copium, you can take and changes to mean a lot of things. So yeah, that's the MvM little extra blog post we have. They're still working on it. Apparently people have panicked enough for them to feel like they need to say something, so there it is. The last tidbit that I have for you, when I originally made the video about how Valve had a bit of a leak on their Steam API that was telling us which Valve developers were posting their Steam News Hub posts, what I didn't include in that video was who was the person who made the post for the MvM update, the initial announcement. Alright, so if we go and open up the historical data that I've saved, because the API doesn't work anymore, if we go and search for this, and we copy the JSON data, we open another notepad file, and we search for Valve access log. So the two Steam IDs here, ending in 263 is Eric S, and the other person is Tom SL. There's not really also anything particular to get from this. This is just a little tiny tidbit of info that I didn't include in the original video, but if we're talking about MvM, then, you know, here it is. You can take it for what you will. I don't really have anything to say about it, but it is mildly interesting that Eric S is known to have touched it, and this Tom SL person has also touched it. Wow. Yeah, I think that's it. Hope we get the MvM update soon. You should follow on Twitch so you can be the jackass in chat spamming the next time a video comes out.